Welcome to the France 24 debate. France has unveiled a plan to stop domestic violence. Femicide is an issue that's made the government act after a mass march at the weekend that mobilised 150,000 people on the streets, all calling for action to stop violence against women in France under the banner of Nous Toutes. That means that all of us women. 138 women this year alone have been killed in France in incidents that have taken place within their relationships, within their homes, domestic violence, to coin another phrase. Well, today, Edouard Philippe, the French Prime Minister, flanked by the Equality Minister Marlène Schiappa, revealed these new measures. It's a €370 million investment package preventing violence against women. That's the aim anyway. The problem is, of course, massive, and let's give you just something to digest here. Every 3 days, a woman in France is murdered by a partner or an ex-partner. And in these cases, to basically tell it like it is, exclusively it's usually male-on-female crime. Before we meet our guests, who've got their opinions, and they will be free to express them, let's take a closer look at the French government's measures.
One of the main problems that have led to so much violence against women is that police often don't take seriously victims' call for help. The government suggests training officers and hiring extra personnel dedicated to domestic violence. An emergency hotline will be available 24/7.
As you know, half of the women who call that number request to leave their home. We can confirm that 1,000 new dwellings will be available for that purpose by January 2020.
In other cases, authorities will force attackers to leave their homes and get treatment in special centers. Authorities could confiscate weapons. The new rules would also allow doctors to flag cases of domestic abuse. But some feminist activists say those measures are far from enough.
We're asking for at least €500 million, not because we want to ask for a high figure. We want them because those 500 million would help offer 2,000 housing units for women and special centers that would help women file the right documents and get all the necessary assistance. They should exist in all areas, but they don't.
Still, Marlène Schiappa, the gender equality minister, told France 24 that the plan is ambitious.
All measures are linked. Training teachers to detect sexist ideas that can one day lead to violence is part of the fight against violence.
About €370 million will be spent on measures tackling violence directly, more than $1 billion on all measures fighting for gender equality.
Each one of those placards being carried bore the name of a woman who lost her life. That puts it into perspective when you see how many placards are being carried by the women at that march in Paris. 50,000 women attending that. And as we said, 138 women losing their lives alone this year because of domestic violence. Let's bring in our guests for this discussion, starting first with Natasha Henry, who is author of Frapper n'est pas aimer, enquête sur les violences conjugales en France. Could you give us the English, please?
It means to hit is not to love. It's against the justification of, a love story that would go wrong, or where passion would be the synonym of, violence.
Indeed. And that is something that has been in many relationships, typically over the years, in drama, in real life, one of those things. So to hate is not to love. I think that's sentiments that will ring home with many people. So Natasha Henry. On the other side of our studio is Anne Le Breton, who is Deputy Mayor of the 4th District of Paris. Oh, sorry, that was Hélène de Poncet, Vice President of the Union Nationale des Familles de Féminicide, the UNFF. Hélène, tell us briefly what your organisation does.
So our organization is, first, it's mostly composed of victims' families that have been getting together in order to provide support to other families who have suffered this tragedy. And we are providing support, help getting legal and psychological issues sorted out. And we also want to be talking to the government and talking to the media about the feminicide phenomenon so that we help reduce it.
Let's hope we can eradicate it, stop it completely. That's the aim. So thank you very much for being with us. On the other side of the studio here, Sophie Barr, who's from Nous Toutes. Take it you're out there marching with a banner and with something purple on?
Yes.
Yeah?
So the feminist group Nous Toutes organized that march. So we had been working for months, trying to mobilize people, and obviously thousands of people marched in the streets of Paris and all over France, and it was probably the biggest feminist march in the history of France. So we can feel that something is going on right now. We can feel that the youth, especially young girls, but also boys, are saying that they want things to change because there's a huge level of gender-based violence in this country in 2019, and we are sick of it.
And you are talking from the position of a school teacher as well, so you know exactly, or you see experientially what happens. We'll get more on that in a second. Sophie, thank you for joining us. And last but not least, Anne Le Breton, who I nearly introduced before, sorry about that. Deputy Mayor of the 4th District of Paris, member of the La République En Marche party, and I also understand that you're representing the spokesperson for Cédric Villani, who's candidate for Paris Mayor. In terms of the scale of Emmanuel Macron's reforms or achievements, how big do you think what's announced today will be if it works?
I think there has been a lot of improvements, and maybe it's not completely up to what the associations were expecting, but I think maybe what's more important than what the government can do is what they can do and what they have already done. I was at the march yesterday, and I'm still wearing purple today. And I think really much more, and I have also had a very long experience working with battered women for almost 10 years in an association that helped women with no papers and who came to us because they were usually in domestic violence. So I know the subject very well. And I think that more than any money can ever do, the most important is what is going on with the demonstrations, because it is really helping a whole country to, get the grip of a hard subject. And I think a lot of people do not realize to what extent, even though when you start asking people, everybody knows somebody who was battered. Everybody actually probably knows somebody or somebody's cousin who was killed because of domestic violence. I personally know 2 people who are not directly, but, friends of friends. And if you start realizing and talking around you do, people, and so this coming of senses is, I think, the most important thing that has happened this weekend, more than the government announcements.
It's one of these things that I think is one of the great secrets. But as you say, so many people know someone who knows someone or has witnessed something. And it is, I think, far more prevalent than people like to say. Sophie, can I bring you in from Nous Toutes? Do you believe the politicians when they talk about this investment of 370 million? Do you think the government will do what it says it's going to do? Because it is a massive investment and a massive job.
370 million is approximately what has been spent this year. So it's not extra money. It's a constant budget. It's the same amount of money that was spent this year. What we're asking is extra money because obviously if we reconduct the same policies, there's no reason for things to change. I agree with you on the fact that it's good to mobilize people. It's good to sensitize people. It's good to bring people on the street. But when women go to the police several times, when they ask for help, they need to be protected. And we can't do that. We can't protect these women from their partners who have guns or knives in their homes. We need restraining orders. We need women to be offered shelters where they are safe. So the people's mobilization is one thing, and we're doing that. But we also need the government to take appropriate measures. And we feel that this is not going to happen right now.
Can I bring in Hélène de Poncé before you come in again, Anne, if you don't mind? Because the issue as well is about how the police act, how the police enforce the law, and what their attitudes are. And of course, the police, like any other body within our society, has certain received views. One of those views might be misogyny, it might be aggression towards women, it might be a certain political viewpoint, but it may well be that the police don't enforce things the way they should. Is that a problem you've encountered?
Yes, there has been an article recently in Le Monde talking about the failures of police in a number of feminicides. And of course, the domestic violence is so common that there is definitely some police officers who are abusers. But I would say, just like in any other functions, the most important issue that we found out was more that the police officers weren't trained properly, and that there was a need to urgently act on that. And I've heard this morning some measures that seem to be bringing an answer to this problem. Why aren't they enforcing it? That probably will be coming out of the audit that is being conducted right now. But all we want is that we don't want to know why. We just want them to just do it.
You just want urgent change, and that's what it's about, because it's something clearly 138 women have died this year in domestic violence incidents.
When a woman speaks up to say that she's been a victim, it happens only once. If you don't believe her, then that's an issue. So we need a presumption of credibility. I've heard that in a colloque recently, and I think presumption of credibility, what we need to offer to women, at least.
There are many women who, for a number of reasons, it's complex, don't speak out, don't report their partners, don't seek help. Some have, I don't know, there could be a problem with money, there could be a problem with shame, there could be any number of reasons. Natasha, can I bring you in? Because obviously you've written about this, and I imagine it's based on research and experience and talks you've had with people. What's your kind of take on the situation?
First of all, I want to underline the fact that the demonstrations were very important, and it's a huge social movement. And I would like to thank the media for the amazing work you've been doing all this week, because it is the training of professionals. I can come back to that because I've been training midwives and doctors at A&E hospitals. But also, shows like this make victims understand that they are actually victims. Some of them are just realizing today that this is what's going on in their private life. So it's hugely important. Yes, you would like the president to give millions of euros tomorrow so that we trained all the police, all the justice, all the doctors, everyone, social workers and stuff. But really what we're doing here with the media and the demonstrations is also training the general public. I'm training my neighbors, by being here. That's what we are all doing, is all those people who say, oh my God, do you think I should leave him? And the answer is yes. So let's get this clear. Anybody in this situation who can leave, leave. It doesn't get better. It doesn't improve, really. I mean, sometimes one guy will seek help and think, okay, I'll go and see a psychologist now because I don't want to be such a horrible father or such a horrible husband. But really, it doesn't get better. So the big message is, thanks to the media and that have, talked about the demonstrations and the women's groups and all this. Now, the training, this is training as well, but the training, when you go and talk to the frontline professionals, they really want to understand what they should be doing, really. I mean, I trained midwives, and their big concern is, how can we protect her and give her advice and understand what's going on before the baby's born? Because if the baby's born, it's a newborn baby, and the woman is like, I can't go home. And then suddenly the whole thing comes out. So we need to do this earlier. So the whole process we are witnessing right now is going to change, because people know they've got to seek help earlier. And all the frontline professionals, even if they didn't get the training on site, they've seen all these things on the media. So that's really good. And they've been talks about the risk assessment. That's a question we've had very often in training of professionals. Do you have a sheet with all the right questions? We have a sheet. It's been on for years. Does he have guns? Has he threatened you? When was the last episode? What happened during the worst episode, which is not necessarily the last episode? Has he threatened you? Has he threatened to kill himself or the children or you? And I don't know, other things like, is he violent towards the pets? Has he harmed your dog or cat? I mean, these guys are really horrible. So So the risk assessment is something that has been talked about. Should the doctors file a complaint? All these things are...
Going back to that risk assessment, it's one of these things about awareness, because women say, oh, it's not me, it happened to someone else, it doesn't happen to me. There's this sense of it isn't me, it couldn't happen to me. Oh, he loves me. It's that kind of, oh, he'll change. And like you're saying, that change never comes, does it? Seldom comes. Rarely comes.
To put it roughly, this is how it works. The situation is kind of okay. Level 2, there's a bit of tension in the house, or if he's an ex outside the house, with messages and stuff. Level 3 is the episode of violence, where this is when maybe the police will intervene, maybe the horrible dramas will take place, whatever. And then level 4, generally, is what used to be called the honeymoon. You know, it's I'm so sorry. I have problems at work right now. My boss is really being horrible to me. I'm sorry, it'll never happen again. And second point is, only you can understand me. Only you can help me. Please help me. Please stay. I love you forever. And then, paf, you get another episode.
I need to pause you there, but what you're saying to me rings true to the stuff I saw as a child with my dad and my mum. It was pretty horrible. Horrible stuff. We're taking a very short break. After that, we will have more from our guests about the issues related to domestic violence here in France. Stay with us.
I'm Sarah Morris, France 24 correspondent in Madrid. I cover Spain and Portugal, 2 countries recovering from painful recessions, but now being challenged by the political and social fallout from those years. Watch me on Live from Paris and France 24 news programmes.
Sarah Morris, one of the 200 France 24 correspondents around the world.
For weeks on end, tens of thousands of people have been protesting across the length and breadth of Lebanon. They're fed up with widespread corruption and a system of government based on religious confession. With the country at a critical juncture, young people are joining forces to break down traditional geographical, social and religious barriers.
جيلنا نحن هلا بمهمة كتير صعبة، عدكي عن كل هي الثورة مطالبها والمشاكل الفساد والوضع المعيشي، نحن بمواجهة حتى مع أهلنا.
Our reporters have visited the Lebanese cities at the heart of the biggest demonstrations to try to understand the anger of the Lebanese people and their hopes for a better future.
Reporters presented by Mark Owen on France 24 and France24.com. Your needs are changing, and so is France24.com. With articles, reports, the latest international news, all our programmes available on replay, together with live broadcasting 24/7. Intuitive, fast, and available in 4 languages. France24.com. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Welcome back. You're watching Live in Paris here on France 24. We'll be back to the debate in a moment. First, let's remind you of the main world news headlines. China has a warning to the protesters in Hong Kong after a pro-democracy landslide in the local elections. China says that Hong Kong will always be ruled from Beijing. Meanwhile, there is still a siege going on around the university where students are stuck there from the last episode of clashes between them and the security forces. Leaked documents have exposed the extent of the violent repression of the Muslim Uyghurs in the far western Xinjiang province of China. Details of prison camps detaining up to 1 million people have been condemned by the authorities in Beijing as fake news. Taxi for Uber. The ride-hailing app has had its license in London revoked. It's an issue of security, apparently, after it was found that some of the Uber drivers were rolling around with fake IDs. And our planet and its future. Greenhouse gases have hit a new high. Scientists say there is no sign even of a slowdown, let alone a reduction. Extreme weather is more likely to become more and more the new normal for all of us. And we're seeing in the south of France extreme weather, as well as across Africa, and of course the wildfires in various parts of the world, particularly California. Welcome back to the France 24 debate. We're looking at the issue of domestic violence here in France with the announcement of a new package by the government in order to try to clamp down on what is a real scourge of society. Some 138 women this year in France have been killed in incidents that have taken place within their own home, often at the hands of a partner or an ex-partner. The alarm has been raised by a number of cases of late. The whole package that has been announced by the Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, is something like 370 million euros. That may seem like a lot of money, but one of our guests at least isn't satisfied with that. She says it's just what's normally spent anyway, and they're asking for more. Let's introduce you to our guests before we take a look at a report on the issue. In no order of preference, because they're all equally great and have fantastic things to say about what is a really tough series of topics we're discussing tonight. Natasha Henry is author of Frapper n'est pas aimer, which is To Hit Isn't to Love. Thank you very much for being with us. On the other side of the studio, opposite Natasha, is Hélène de Poncet, who is Vice President of the Union Nationale des Familles de Féminicide. Feminicide, of course, the opposite of homicide. And, of course, it's sad in our language and in our world that we have to have those two words. But feminicide, of course, has brought it more democratically, I suppose, because once upon a time, people didn't think about women being killed in that way. But is it important that that word exists, do you think?
Of course. I think the fact that we have a word actually defines the phenomena and attracts attention onto this phenomena. I'm a bit disappointed that the femicide term did not make it to the penal code penal. That was one of our requirements from our association. The reason being that today, if you kill your partner, it's a homicide with an aggravating circumstance because it's a partner. But what we see that when there is a judgment, the penalties don't include this aggravating circumstance. So the average penalty for homicide or femicide is just about the same, just 1 year difference.
Indeed, as I understand, it was 1994 that the idea of a crime passionnel or a crime of passion was done away with. So that's another set of circumstances which seem to discriminate against women, even in the aspect of being attacked, which is, it seems completely unthinkable. But that's something that was the case, now has changed. It needs to change more.
Very recently, though, I'm sorry for interrupting.
Sophie, go ahead. Sophie Barr of New Tout.
2 or 3 years ago, or even maybe last year, you could still see newspaper headlines talking about crimes of passion or family tragedies when a man would kill his entire family. So it's very, very recent.
Is that the law, or is that just poor journalists, do you think?
That's poor journalism.
Bad journalism.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I will extricate myself from that one because I don't think I've ever done that.
Well, no.
There's no of courses. I don't think I've ever done that one, but it's just really, I hear what you're saying completely.
But it's true that it's changed, and we don't hear these.
But it needs
anymore.
to change more. That's what you're saying.
Well, I mean, as feminist activists, obviously, we're very happy to have brought thousands of people in the street, but we're impatient. We don't want things to change through their natural course, because that's going to take hundreds of years. That's going to take thousands of more deaths. We want things to change now. So we can't accept that the government does not spend basically €1 more than they did this year on domestic violence. For us, it's totally outrageous.
Sophie is also a teacher. I'm looking forward to hearing how you deal with this topic with your pupils very shortly. Let's just introduce our fourth guest, Anne Le Breton, Deputy Mayor of the 4th District of Paris, member of the LREM party, spokesperson for Cédric Villani, who's standing for Paris Mayor. Inevitably, you're going to be fielding the questions about the government and about the policy because you're from the La République En Marche. What Sophie was just saying about the spending, can you sort of give us some more of a context on the figures, whether it's enough, whether you feel the government can achieve what it wants to achieve?
Well, the government obviously has to, arbitrate where they spend money, and they're under a lot of pressure to spend it everywhere. I think, as I said before, that money is an issue, and you do have to open more shelters. Cédric Villani, we have an offer for the municipal election where we want to open a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week house that will be very well identified, where you will be able to get the first-hand psychological, personal, legal help. and especially open on 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. That's our proposition. And of course, there are a lot of things that are already done, and you still have to do more things. And, you know, but it's a start, and I agree that you need more money. There are things that cannot be done without more money. Opening more shelters, that's really an issue. Getting more police to be able to take women when they need to take their children, for example, to their visiting rights with fathers. Well, maybe that will change, because now the visiting rights will be taken away, because there's I thought, a very important point that was changing in the law, that women will not have to obey to those visiting rights.
Sure.
And that's a key issue, because I have seen women battered in public places because they were told by the judge of family affairs that they had to take the child until the judgment was done. So in the worst of the breaking up, they were waiting for months to have an audition with the judge of family affairs, and they were having to take their children to the father, and they were doing that in public places, and they would still get beaten up in front of everybody, and they had to give the child to the father, unless they were risking to lose their own rights on that child.
This is all going to change.
And this is very recently, and this is going to change. Violent fathers are going to lose their parental rights, but we're going to have to be very careful that is done very quickly after the women leave their house, and not 2 or 3 months later. And that the women need to be really well accompanied psychologically and legally during that time. And they have to be in a place with volunteers who can help, maybe between the police and the woman itself. It needs more than one person.
Thank you. Some people say France is playing catch-up in many ways compared to other countries such as Spain in terms of how they approach this matter. Our next film features a family destroyed in many ways by the effects of domestic violence. At least one person dead, but others scarred for the rest of their lives by what they saw and what they lived through.
Elle s'appelait Guylaine, c'était ma petite sœur, elle avait 34 ans. Elle a été frappée et immolée par son compagnon le 22 septembre et en est décédée le 24 septembre 2017. Ma sœur et son compagnon se sont disputés et s'en est suivi donc des coups très très violents. Et ensuite, monsieur a pris de l'essence, l'a versé sur ma sœur et a mis le feu devant leur petite fille de 7 ans. Les rapports d'expertise ont démontré que ma sœur avait été totalement défoncée par cet individu. Elle avait le côté gauche enfoncé du visage, et ma nièce nous a dit qu'il lui avait sauté dessus alors qu'elle était à terre. En 2007, ils se sont rencontrés et au fil des années, ça s'est un petit peu dégradé. C'était un manipulateur et il lui disait de faire le ménage de droite à gauche et pas de gauche à droite. Il ne fallait pas que quand il rentre, elle soit au téléphone. Et il y avait dans toute la maison, il y avait une très grosse emprise psychologique.
Et je pense que oui, l'emprise a été tellement forte, et c'est pour ça qu'en fait, elle n'a pas appelé au secours.
Quelques mois avant le drame, elle a rencontré un jeune homme qui lui a dit les choses qu'elle n'entendait plus à la maison et qui lui a donné l'attention qu'elle n'avait pas à la maison. Et voilà, et elle a donc décidé de partir le 22 septembre et il ne l'a pas laissé partir. Je sais que dans les derniers jours, elle avait peur parce qu'elle l'a dit à sa meilleure amie en lui disant « Tu essayes de m'appeler, si tu ne réponds pas, tu essaies d'appeler d'autres numéros, c'est qu'il me sera arrivé quelque chose. » Mais à nous, sa famille proche, elle ne nous l'a pas dit.
On croit que ça arrive qu'aux autres, parce que c'est des trucs qui sont tellement...
Ça arrive que dans les films.
Ouais.
une femme tous les 2 jours qui meurt sous les coups de son compagnon. C'est horrible. Ça devrait pas arriver.
An absolutely harrowing story. I've seen it 3 times, this report. It doesn't get any easier to watch. Even though I know what's coming next, it still shakes me completely to hear what is said there. And I imagine that you have your thoughts too about this. Express anything you wish to. Sophie, I'd like to start with you, because in your role as a teacher, how important is it, do you think, to get it through to young people what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, what you can tolerate, what you can't tolerate, what you can do, what you shouldn't do? How important is that?
Yes, of course. Well, I teach English, but I'm involved in sensitizing on gender equality in my school and in my previous high school as well. I get together a group of students that are motivated to work on these issues with me, because in order to get the message across, it's much more effective if it's the students themselves who talk to their peers. And each year we do different stuff. Last year we organized like debating cafes. The year before that, my students created a sort of a large game, like a board game, a sort of a gender inequalities monopoly kind of game, where they had to play the role of a person of the opposite gender, and to help them to understand what it's like, especially for boys, to help them understand what it's like to be a girl and to go through stuff like sexual harassment or street harassment. And it was really interesting to see how they reacted. But there's a high level of sexism within the youth and sexist stereotypes, but at the same time, I can feel that they want things to change. And as soon as you talk to them about these issues, they're really interested and eager to learn and to deconstruct their preconceived ideas. So I'm very hopeful. And a lot of the people who are on the streets are very young. So I think the young generation is eager to see changes in this country.
I'm sure everyone agrees that they've got great hope because they've got a teacher like you, which is good, because you're saying the right things and doing the right things. Is this more of a problem in France than it is in other countries? Anybody? Natasha?
First of all, we have very good statistics in France. The system of, getting data is pretty good. So now it seems we come second after Germany. But I work for for the EU projects around domestic violence, and some countries have very, very low rates, just because they have no idea how to get the figures. So I'm not sure it's I'm not sure France is worse than anywhere else.
As you're talking, Natasha, we've got some statistics, which, lies in statistics, we can say that, but it does show that there is obviously, a difference between England and Wales, Spain and Italy and France there. But obviously, if you look at the other end of the scale, there's Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK, which is, higher. So I don't know what that tells us, other than it's worse in some places and better in others,
I mean, I know we have this figure of 138, which is more or less the same every year. Sometimes it's 120, sometimes it's even higher.
Though, isn't it?
I mean, I want to think of all the victims who are barely alive in hospitals and, disabled for life because their ex-partner or partner has, I don't know, thrown something or shot or whatever, taken a knife. There's a lot of drama going on there. France has maybe one problem that I don't know if the other countries have that, is the people don't want to report. Like if you're a witness, there's a whole complex of not...
It's got nothing to do with me.
Yes,
wash their hands,
so you have the victim here, the
thing.
perpetrator here, and the people in the middle who know that's what's going on. Yeah. We've heard a lot of stories where, then they say, we all knew about this and that, we all knew, it was well known, but nobody ever spoke about it.
So it's still like that today, because when I was a child, and I spoke a little bit earlier about my own experiences as a youngster, people wouldn't get involved because it's between a man and a woman. It's between a husband and a wife.
No, now it's not like that.
That's not of our business. Let's get involved. And that was the attitude of the police as well.
It's changing, fortunately, because of the demonstrations and the associations of family of victims, and everybody is like trying to get these things across and heard. No, I hear this when I talk to witnesses or people in the middle. They don't want to be the one who. I don't want him to go to prison because of me. The friend of the friend says, really? And sometimes they don't believe the victim. I mean, I've heard people say that the actress Adèle Haenel, who talked about what happened to her being raped by or at least sexually assaulted by a film director when she was 13 years old. I know this female doctor who said to me the other day, she's an actress, come on. I mean, she knows how to play the part. So we have a problem here of you have to believe the victim.
That went right over my head.
This is a feminist thing we've known.
You're saying it's a doctor who said that about the actress when she was a child? Oh, she knows how to play a part. That's
because of that long interview. That's amazing and amazing. And I saw Adèle Haenel in the demonstration just with everybody else, and this interview is amazing. It's very brave, but because she's an actress,
And because it comes late as well.
Yeah,
like
why not
people
before?
don't understand the mechanisms
Yes.
of trauma. They don't understand why some women speak 10 years later, 20 years later, 40 years later.
Yeah.
If they speak too late, a lot of people won't believe them.
Why haven't you come forward till now is what typically is said, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing.
There's a high level of ignorance about how gender violence works. For example, when a woman is raped, sometimes her brain disconnects and she cannot move anymore, and so she won't fight back.
Why didn't she fight back?
A lot
because
of
she was
judges
scared, you know.
don't even know how this works, and so sometimes when there's a trial, they are said to have consented to the sexual intercourse. So that's why judges need to be trained. They need to understand all these things. They need to understand that sometimes you can't fight back. When women aren't believed because they go into trial to get their rapist convicted and there's no conviction because there are very, very few convictions, it doesn't help society to change because a lot of rape victims, there's one of our friends at Nutut who talked about the rape that she suffered 3 years ago, and she explained why she didn't go to the police, because sometimes you get the trial is going to last for years.
The trauma was even bigger, perhaps.
On Friday, I got a message from a friend of mine saying she couldn't come to the march, but she was thinking about me, and she told me that she has a colleague at her school whose daughter was raped 5 years ago, and the trial results came in last week. And the rapist got a 1.5-year prison sentence for sexual assault because the rape was not acknowledged by the justice system, and because it's only 1.5 years, he won't serve 1 day in jail. And so she's broken again. It's like a second violence. It's like she's suffering the whole thing again. And so I'm sure that she might actually regret having gone through all this.
So the legal system has to change. As you've said, there's work to try and make that happen. Can I just broaden this out a little bit? I mean, I'm thinking you mentioned the actress who has come forward to speak about her horrible experiences. But in France, Roman Polanski, for instance, the film director, who it's acknowledged raped a 13-year-old girl in Hollywood, he's been sheltered by France. Is France wrong to do that? Is that something France shouldn't do? It's not a political question. I think this is a moral question. Anne, would you send him back?
Anne or Hélène?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm terribly sorry. Hélène, I'm very sorry.
Okay. I mean, I don't have it's
no
not
strong
my
feeling on that
area of expertise, but yes, my gut feeling is that yes, he should be.
He should face justice.
Yeah, he should face it, and
obviously there's the new case which has come up in France of a 17, 18-year-old girl saying that she was attacked by him.
Yeah, but
Yes.
I mean, he's a good example of things changing in this country, because 10 years ago, when he was arrested in Switzerland, he had all his friends in the media, powerful people. There was a petition from all the film directors in this country and some in the States supporting him. I know him. It's such an old story. Who cares about this? It was in the 70s.
That's true.
I was in a minority when I talked about it at the time, by the way.
Huh?
You mentioned about the media. I was in a minority when I said, hang on a minute, this is an offence. And we said, no.
Even the Minister of Culture at the time was on his side and said, it's just an old story. Who cares, Frédéric Mitterrand? Now it's a bit different. This is a big change in 2019.
Anne?
Definitely
Anne.
An old story when you ran, that, that is something, an old story is an old story if you've paid your dues. But that wasn't the case.
No, we haven't paid dues at all, had he? Final word, Sophie?
About Roman Polanski.
About Roman Polanski and about the future. Do you think the future for your kids,
Roman
the kids
Polanski
you
should
teach
be
is going to be better?
extradited.
Yeah.
And about the future, we're going to keep fighting because we've never been as determined and as motivated. And when we see all these people asking for change and asking us to continue what we're doing, well, I'm hopeful, and at the same time, I'm very angry about what the Prime Minister said and what he didn't say this morning. He didn't have one word for the march of Saturday. He didn't even mention it. There's 100,000 people marching in the streets of Paris, and he did not even mention the march. So, yeah, we're determined and a little bit angry too.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. We'll have a little bit more in Media Watch coming straight away.